guys, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if it is your first time here. My name is Jess. I upload videos once a week, and today I'm going to be talking about the books that I read during the month of January. So without further ado, let's jump straight in. Okay, so the first book that I read in January was Call Down the Hawk by Maggie Stiefvater. This is YA paranormal, and it's the first book in a new trilogy called the Dreamer Trilogy, which is a spin-off of Maggie Stiefvater's other series, The Raven Cycle. Now, one of the main characters in this book is a character from that series, so you don't necessarily need to have read The Raven Cycle in order to pick these ones up, but some of the characters do crop up from those books in this one, and I guess that this book would be a little bit spoilery for that series. So if you wanted to read this one and then go back to The Raven Cycle, I think that you may find you have been spoiled a little bit for some of the storyline. But I was really excited to pick this up because Ronan is my favourite character from The Raven Cycle, and this trilogy is all about him. So the basic premise is that Ronan is a dreamer, which means that when he goes to sleep, he has the ability to bring back objects and items from his dreams, but because he is quite a troubled character, those things are not always good things. Adding to that, we have two other characters. We have Jordan Hennessy, who is also a dreamer and a thief, and we have Carmen Farouk Lane, whose brother was a dreamer, and she is working with an organisation to destroy dreamers because she believes that something terrible is going to be unleashed on Earth because of those dreamers. So that's kind of the basic premise. They're the basic characters. I really enjoyed this. They're not what I would call cerebral books. It's not literary fiction, but there is something very poetic and very beautiful about Maggie Stiefvater's writing, which just really appeals to me. I love falling into the stories that she creates. I love following the journeys of the characters that she writes. They're just really fun and really easy to read. YA paranormal is not a genre that I would necessarily have chosen to pick up had I not read The Raven Cycle, but I really enjoyed this. Fast, fun, enjoyable, easy to read. If that sounds like your kind of thing, then I would definitely pick this up. And as I said, Ronan he has my heart. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. The next one was slightly different from me. I picked up a Christian non-fiction, which I appreciate will not be for everyone, but it's not supposed to be this way. Finding Unexpected Strength When Disappointments Leave You Shattered by Lisa Turkhurst, I want to say. So yeah, I appreciate this won't be for everyone. You definitely have to be a person of Christian faith, I think, for this book to appeal to you, because it's basically a study or a walkthrough of how to assimilate your belief that God is a good God and that God has a plan for your life when maybe your life doesn't look the way that you thought that it would, either because of hurts or disappointments or betrayals, either small things and big things, just anything like that. And the way that Lisa Turkhurst does it is to tell stories and analogies from her own life, and I appreciated her honesty and the way that she made herself vulnerable in order to do that. There's not really much I can say about this book. Yeah, I found it helpful. It gave me things to think about. It didn't necessarily blow my socks off. There were no huge revelations, and it actually took me quite a long time to get through. I think I started it September, October last year, and I've just kind of been dipping in and out of it, but yeah, I'm glad to have finished it. I'm glad that I picked it up. If you are a person of Christian faith who has maybe faced difficulties in your life, and this sounds like the kind of book that would appeal to you, then I would definitely recommend it. I did find it useful, I did find it helpful. There were definitely things that I picked out from it that I will try and apply going forwards, but yeah, there's not much more I can say about it than that. The next book that I picked up was a little bit of a disappointment, I'm afraid, and that was The Garden of Lost and Found by Harriet Evans. So I have another Harriet Evans book on my unread TBR, which is The Wildflowers, but the reason that I picked this one up first is because this is a family saga stroke drama dual timeline type novel, and I am a huge fan of Kate Morton, who I believe is the queen of family drama dual timeline novels, and I love everything that she has written, so I thought that I would give another author a go. And I really feel like for some people this book will just be a perfect, exquisite, gorgeous read, but for me personally it just missed the mark. So I'll tell you the basic premise, and then I'll try and explain why it didn't quite work for me. So this is, as I said, a dual timeline family saga novel. So we have the present day, we have a family, a woman called Juliet who is struggling in her marriage. She has 3 children. One of them is a teenager who's kind of going through some stuff, and then she has 2 younger children, and she inherits a family house. And then flashback, our historical timeline is set during, or it begins during 1918, and we're following the Horner family, and Ned Horner is a very famous artist, and he basically paints this painting that goes on to become renowned the world over, and then in a fit of madness he burns this painting, and all that is left is an original tiny little sketch of it, of what it was going to look like. So we're kind of following the 1918 story, and then we're following the present day as well, and I could really see and appreciate what Harriet Evans was trying to do. There were twists, there were turns, there were some exciting elements, but as I said, for me it just missed the mark, and I think that that has a lot to do with the fact that I struggled to connect with the characters. So Juliet is probably the character that I connected with the most, which to me is quite obvious because she's a modern day mum trying to work, trying to balance having children with her working life, and I could kind of connect to her with that. But for me, I just felt detached from the characters and from their journeys, and I feel like it was written a little bit like a film script or a TV script would be. So there was no explanation of why the characters were making the decisions that they were making, and you just have he said, she said, and then she did, and there was no kind of wraparound explanation to help us, the reader, understand the thought processes of the characters. And I found that quite quite disjointing, and I found myself just ultimately detached from what was going on, and I couldn't. Connection with characters is really, really important for me, and so that lack of connection really hampered my reading experience. And I think also throw into that the fact that elements of the historical timeline were so dramatic, but like overly dramatic in a way that became unbelievable, and it's a shame because it just didn't work for me. The whole format and style of writing, I just felt like it was almost like a script. So unfortunately it just didn't work for me. I'm not a fan of reading that type of book. The format was just a little bit off. I think I would have preferred a richer, deeper reading experience, whereas for me this felt like I was reading a TV script. And of course the difference with watching something like that is it's very visual, and you get all the little markers and the little clues from the scene and the way the scene is set, but it's missing there. So you just had the dialogue, or you just had one character doing something and then immediately doing something else, and there was nothing to kind of join it together and follow along with. So yeah, as I said, I can see what she was trying to do, and I really, really, really wanted to like it, but for me, connection with characters is key to my enjoyment of a book, and this one just unfortunately missed the mark. So I am still going to give The Wildflowers a go. Having done some other research after finishing this one, a lot of people who liked Harriet Evans said that this wasn't her strongest book, so I'm still going to give The Wildflowers a go. But yeah, unfortunately this one just wasn't for me. The next book that I picked up was Tower of Dawn by Sarah J Maas. This is a mature YA fantasy book. I think it's the 5th book in the Throne of Glass series, and if you've been around my channel for a while, you'll know that I have mixed feelings about Sarah J Maas and her books. I love her creativity, I love the worlds that she makes, I love the characters, some of the characters that she writes, but some of her writing quirks I find so incredibly irritating, and I often find myself getting quite frustrated when I'm reading her books. But I have to say that this book I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did, and I just pressed pause because you may be wondering why on earth I'm picking these books up if I'm not enjoying them, and I do enjoy them when I'm reading them. There's just a few little niggles that every time I pick up one of the books I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. But this book just did not have any of those, and I'm quite astonished at how much I enjoyed this book, and I thought that it was incredibly clever because basically what she has done is take two of the characters from the Throne of Glass series and pull them out of the main storyline and then tell a story about something that is happening to them, which is running alongside, I believe, the events of the final book, which I haven't read yet, which is called Kingdom of Ash. And it was incredibly clever, quite frustrating because you would get little snippets of things that were happening over here, but you didn't get the whole story because the focus was on these two characters. So it was incredibly clever but quite frustrating, but I am astonished, honestly, about how much I enjoyed this book, and I'm excited now to kind of jump back in and finish this series. So the two characters are Kale and Nesrin. It's quite difficult to talk about this book without giving too much away about what happens earlier on in the series, and it's quite an epic series. As I said, I think this is book 5 of 6 or 6 of 7 maybe. The things that I really liked about this book were that she has borrowed heavily from the Mongol history, from the Genghis Khan type storyline, which I loved. I loved the fantastical twists that she put on it. I loved her character development. I think some of the characters in this particular book are going to be my favourite of all time in this series. I mean, none of them came close to Manon. Just going to say that. Manon will always be my favourite, but yeah, I just really enjoyed it. So obviously it's difficult to talk too much about what this book is about without spoiling you for the rest of the series, but I'll just give you kind of an overarch. If you like magic systems, if you like magical creatures, if you like assassins, if you like trials and tribulations, if you don't mind a little bit of sex, if you like fairies, if you like witches and bloodthirsty fighting and demons and darkness, but all with an undercurrent of passion and hope, then I think the Throne of Glass series will be something that you would enjoy. Just, you know, set in for the long haul because the books are not small. But yeah, I'm really excited for the final book in this series now and being able to tick off that I have done it, and I'm really interested to see how Sarah J Maas is going to kind of bring everything together. Yeah, honestly did not expect to like this as much as I did, and I'm so glad that I picked it up. And then the final book that I read this month was War of the Roses Stormbird by Con Iggulden. This is historical fiction. It begins in 19, no, it definitely doesn't begin in 19, it begins in 1437 and is the story of Henry VI. And we've jumped back a little bit, and I think that this is kind of, because it's one of 3 books, it's a build up to the War of the Roses and how it came to be that the War of the Roses even happened in the first place. And honestly, Con Iggulden for me is an author that I think is highly underrated. I rabbit on about him all the time. I push him on people all the time. I loved his Emperor series, I loved his Genghis Khan series, and I almost went back and read his Emperor series, but I own all of these books and I've never read them, so I thought that it was better to kind of jump into a book that I hadn't read before. But I'm a little bit disappointed by this, and I'm hoping that now the first book is out of the way and the scene has been set, that we'll kind of get into our stride a little bit. But there were just so many characters in this book, and the thing that I like about Con Iggulden is his no-nonsense approach to historical fiction. He takes what can be quite complex historical events and quite complex historical figures, and he tells it in a relatable story, and I really like that. But he had so many characters in this book that it was a little bit baffling at times, and you felt like you were kind of jumping all over the place and going here and there, and occasionally you'd have 2 characters together and in the same paragraph you would switch perspectives, and it was just a little bit disjointing to read. I mean, it was still very accessible, very easy to read historical fiction if that's not something that you pick up a lot. I do highly rate him as a historical fiction author, but something was a little bit about this book, and yeah, I did feel a bit disappointed. I'm gonna stick with it, probably get to the end and be like, that was amazing, I can't believe I ever criticised it. But, and I think it may be a scene setting thing, that he's trying to deal with quite a widespread series of events that all kind of culminate in this explosion that is the War of the Roses. So I suppose he kind of has to, yeah, it would be difficult without this book being about 4 times the size to do that. And I'm not trying to make excuses, but I think that that might be ultimately the reason. But yeah, it just was a bit baffled in places, and that doesn't normally happen to me. And I also don't know if that is because this is a period of history that I have read a lot of books about. So some of the characters were new, but generally I know and understand the story, having read the likes of Philippa Gregory and Elizabeth Chadwick. So yeah, I don't know if there was a little bit of that as well. It wasn't new ground for me, whereas his Emperor series and his Genghis Khan series, I'd never read anything set during those periods or about those historical figures. So it's kind of like new and exciting, whereas maybe I switched off a little bit because I kind of thought that I knew the story. I don't know. I feel like I'm making excuses now. It was good. I think I had just set my expectations really, really high, and it didn't quite match up to that. Possibly. I'm waffling now, I'm making excuses. It was good. Connie Goddard is a highly underrated historical fiction author. I think that I'm just going to wait and see, read the other 2 books and see how we go. So yeah, that was the final book that I read. So there you go, they were the books that I read during the month of January. Let me know what your favourite book that you read this month was. I always love to know, or let me know what you're reading right now. I always love to chat with you guys in the comments. As always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give me the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you aren't already, and I'll see you all soon.